When is a task done? If you don't know, then you might try to create shippable assets for a prototype. Now, that's obviously an extreme example, but it's still super helpful to know what done means. Today, I'm going to talk about a degree of done chart, which can be used to define what done means for different disciplines and different stages of game development. I'm going to give examples and show you how you can use a degree of done chart for your game development cycle. Hi, I'm Jen Sandercock, and this is Jen's Generally Good Game Production Advice. I'm a games producer who loves helping teams ship their games on time, on budget, with a happy team. Over the course of over 16 years in games, I've seen a lot of good and bad production processes. So in this advice column, I respond to game developers from all different disciplines who are having problems on their game. Today's question is, how do you like to track a first pass versus iteration versus being ready to ship? I love this question, Super Bowl. Oh gosh, I probably love all of my questions, but I love this one, and I'm very excited to get into this. I even have lots of fun diagrams for you today. So, why do you need to know what done is? Well, if you don't, a bunch of problems can arise. These include people spending too long on tasks since they think an asset needs to be shippable quality right now. There could be frustrations on the team due to mismatched expectations. For example, when someone thinks, hey, I did this task, but somebody else is like, you overdid it, you spent too long on it, or actually you haven't done it enough yet. It can also lead to bad time estimation, which then in turn leads to an inability to predict when are you going to be finished making this game. It can also lead to confusion as to what needs to be in the next milestone and the quality bar that is required for those for what you're shipping. So how do you know when something is done? Well, it depends on the phase and goals and how you're building the game. So for example, prototype phase, you do not want shippable assets because you're probably going to have to throw them out as you kind of find out why the game is fun or isn't fun, and a whole bunch of stuff won't be needed anymore. So what to do? You need to create a shared language with your team. Then you all understand what you are asking people to do, and then everybody knows what to expect. It also makes defining deliverables to stakeholders way easier. Yay! So what I like to use is what I call a degree of done chart. Well, what is that? And I'm glad you asked me. So here's an example. I start at DD0 and go all the way up to DD5, which is shippable. And if that's too many degrees for your team, then change to whatever needs to be for whatever works for you and your game. So like when you're at DD0, you need to use like a lot of imagination to try to guess what's this final version of the game going to be like. And then at DD5, it's obviously ready to go, no imagination needed. It's right there in front of your eyes, ready to ship. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail. DD0 is a document, sketch, concept art, or some other statement of intent. DD1 is a prototype with very basic functionality. Maybe it's got grey box or something similar to that. DD2 is the basic working version of your game. At this point, you've got some sort of refinement from the prototype, and you're going to have a lot more content and features. DD3 is alpha, and it looks a lot like the final game and has all of the features, but you're going to be still missing some content, and it's going to have tons of bugs. DD4 is beta. It's super close to the final game. All of your content is in, but there's still a bit more polish and some bug fixing. DD5 is shippable. So that means there's no blocking bugs and you're ready to send it off to the public. Each discipline is going to have a slightly different definition of what their degree of done will be depending on their pipelines and processes. So for example, at DD2, level design is about having good flow, whereas DD2 for narrative means some complete conversations with others, and others are only partially done. What you choose for your definitions of degree of done will depend on your game, how you're going to build that game, and how you define your development process, development phases, and going to actually build the game. So to build a degree of done chart, your entire team needs to get on board with it. One person can come up with the basic definitions, or you could start with my example chart that you can find in the resources section in the description for this. Once you've got a basic template, then you can get your discipline leads to edit and then sign off on what degrees of done means for their discipline. All right, so you've got a chart. How do you use the chart? Well, the simplest way to use degree of done is just to have it as a property on your tasks or tickets. Then when creating tasks, you specify that this thing needs to be done to DD3 or 0 or whatever it is. And then not only will the person who is doing the task know what quality bar they should be aiming for, they're also going to be able to create more accurate time estimates to predict when they'll finish work. And on top of this, it's going to help everybody on the team know what to expect as a deliverable when that particular task is done. Number 2, you can also use degree of done to define your big milestones, builds, or other deliverables. So for example, a mid-production phase milestone, you might kind of specify a certain percentage of assets need to be at DD3, or that maybe only risky features need to be at DD2. As another example, for your alpha build, the overall degree of done for the game should be DD3. However, some disciplines are going to be ahead or behind on that. You can write this out explicitly and then you all know what you're delivering. So for example, narrative might be DD4 and SFX might be DD2 and so on. This can help massively, not just with the team internally, but for stakeholders, including publishers. If you give them your degree of done chart, along with the list of what you're planning to deliver and when, then there won't be any nasty surprises for anyone. And oh boy, do we love reducing nasty surprises on both sides when working with publishers. The degree of done chart can also give you a visual representation of how finished an entire level is. It becomes a tracking language that you can use to have a clear understanding of what's been done and what work is remaining. It's kind of like a traffic light system, but you're getting extra steps along the way. This is going to help you figure out when some disciplines are falling behind or when other disciplines are going too fast. And you know the game's going to be fully shippable when everything's purple. And that's it. Degree of done chart can go by many other names and have many other different structures. But hopefully my structure is going to give you a good starting point so that you can figure out what's going to work for you and your team. Once you've created that structure, you and your team will be able to discuss milestones clearly, you'll know what quality bar is trying to be achieved right now, and people can iterate on work with confidence until you're ready to ship. So, thank you so much for joining me today. If you'd like some advice, ask me. You don't have to be a producer. I'm open to all different people having problems, and I love helping people. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember this is general advice and it may not be right for you and your team. For me to help better, it needs to be a dialogue between you, me, and your whole team. So you can find out more about hiring me right here. Thank you. Bye.